The clock that shouldn't tick. When Jacob saw the online listing, he almost scrolled right past it. $1 clock. Something is wrong with it. No photo, no description, no details. Just that line. He clicked out of curiosity more than anything else. The seller lived only 2 towns over, and the pickup instructions were simple. Leave the dollar in the mailbox, take the clock from the porch. It sounded like a scam, but Jacob, a 25-year-old who spent too much time restoring old junk for fun, couldn't resist a challenge. He imagined a cracked glass cover or worn-out gear, something he could bring back to life with a bit of patience. So that evening, he drove out to the address. The house and the clock. The house looked abandoned. Windows boarded up, yard overgrown. The porch creaked under his weight. There it was, the clock. A tall, narrow wooden frame, hand-carved with intricate patterns that spiraled in on themselves. It looked centuries old, like something that belonged in a forgotten manor. The pendulum inside gleamed faintly under the porch light. Jacob dropped the dollar into the rusted mailbox slot and carried the clock to his car. It was heavier than he expected, and when he placed it on the back seat, for just a moment, he swore the pendulum swung on its own, even though the clock wasn't wound. Night 1, back in his apartment, Jacob cleaned the clock up and hung it on the empty living room wall. He liked how it filled the space. When he wound it, the mechanism came to life smoothly. The second hand moved perfectly. The pendulum ticked, steady and clear. Tick, tock, tick, tock. It was almost soothing. He went to bed smiling, proud of his $1 miracle. That night, he dreamed of something moving behind the carved patterns, like eyes watching from the wood. Night 2. The ticking was louder. Too loud. Jacob woke around 2:13 a.m. and thought maybe he'd overwound it. The sound echoed through the whole apartment. When he went to check, the clock's hands were spinning. Slowly but without stopping, around and around. He reached up to stop the pendulum. When he touched it, everything went silent. No ticking, no refrigerator hum, not even the sound of his own breathing. And then the clock chimed, but instead of bells, it was a whisper, a single word he couldn't quite make out. Something between his name and a sigh. Then as suddenly as it started, it was over. Jacob backed away, shaking his head. "Must be tired," he muttered and went back to bed. Night 3. He didn't remember falling asleep, but woke up on the couch, facing the clock. It was 3:47 a.m. The hands were moving normally again, but now the carved wooden frame seemed different. Some of the swirls looked deeper, almost like they'd been carved overnight. He leaned closer. The grooves formed what looked like a face, distorted, screaming, hidden among the spirals. He stumbled back. The pendulum swung harder, the ticking faster, louder. The entire room seemed to pulse with it, each beat matching his heartbeat until he couldn't tell the difference. And behind the ticking, whispers from inside the clock. He covered it with a sheet. Night 4. Jacob couldn't sleep. He tried moving the clock to the balcony, but every time he turned away, it would somehow be back on the wall. He started hearing the ticking even outside his apartment. In his car, at the grocery store, even in the shower. People around him began to look strange. The cashier at the store blinked wrong, both eyelids closing sideways. A jogger across the street froze mid-step for a full minute. Everywhere the world felt slightly off, like a dream he couldn't wake from. That night he lost control. He tore the clock from the wall and hurled it into the trash outside. The ticking stopped instantly. He laughed in relief and went to bed. The morning after, Jacob woke up to sunlight streaming through his window. Everything was calm, quiet. The clock was gone. His living room was still. He smiled. It must have been stress, a hallucination, a bad dream. But when he looked outside, the sky wasn't right. It was too blue, a uniform, sterile blue like paint. The trees moved in slow, jerky motions. And the people on the street weren't moving naturally. They walked in perfect rhythm, Every step in sync, every turn identical. Their faces didn't move when they spoke. A man waved to him from across the street, his hand bent the wrong way. Jacob froze. His phone buzzed. A notification. It was an online listing. $1 clock. Something is wrong with it. The attached photo showed his living room wall. The clock was hanging there again. The truth ticks. Panicking, Jacob smashed his phone. But the ticking started again. Faint at first, then louder, as if coming from inside the walls. He tore through the apartment trying to find it. Each door led to another version of the same room. Same wall, same clock, same impossible sky outside. He tried to scream, but his voice didn't make a sound. And then he noticed the reflection in the clock's glass. It wasn't his face. It was the wooden face from the carvings, twisting, writhing, grinning. The pendulum stopped. The clock chimed 13 times. Weeks later, a new online post appeared. $1 clock. Something is wrong with it. A woman scrolling through her phone frowned at the strange photo attached. A blurry image of a young man standing in front of an old clock, face hidden in shadow. Curious, she clicked buy. The clock that found her. The clock arrived 3 days after she clicked buy. Its wood was darker than the photo showed, almost black, and the carvings seemed to shift when she wasn't looking directly at them. The seller had shipped it in an unmarked box. No note, no return address. Just the clock, ticking softly as if it had never stopped. Her name was Lena, a 23-year-old antique enthusiast who liked strange things. Broken dolls, dusty typewriters, forgotten music boxes. But this clock, this one felt alive. When she hung it on her apartment wall, it immediately started ticking. She hadn't even wound it. Night 1. At 3:07 a.m., Lena woke to the sound of the ticking. It wasn't just loud. It echoed as though her small apartment had become a hollow space. The pendulum swung like a heartbeat. She sat up, and in the faint moonlight, the clock's face seemed to shimmer. The Roman numerals bled together, warping into symbols she didn't recognize. Her phone buzzed beside her. Unknown number. Do not let it stop. She blinked, stared at the message, and before she could respond, her phone died. When she looked back at the clock, the pendulum had stopped mid-swing. The room grew very cold, and then she heard it, a whisper right behind her ear. You shouldn't have bought it. The man in the mirror. The next morning, Lena convinced herself it was a dream. But when she walked past her mirror, she froze. For a brief second, her reflection wasn't her. It was a man. Tired eyes, stubble. Same expression of confusion and fear. He mouthed something. Run! She spun around. No one there. When she looked back, her reflection was normal. That's when she noticed the clock's ticking had slowed. And every time it ticked, the reflection's lips moved. Night 2. The whispers returned, not one voice this time. Dozens, layered, frantic, circling her. They came from the walls, from the floorboards, from inside the clock. She tried to record it on her phone, but all she got was static. And under the static, a faint sound. A voice male saying her name. Lena, it's me, Jacob, the man from the listing. That name wouldn't leave her mind. Lena searched the online post again, hoping to find the seller's information, but the listing was gone. Instead, a new one had appeared. $1 clock. It came back. The attached photo showed a man standing in front of the same clock. His face was partly hidden by shadow, but she recognized him, the man from her mirror. Jacob, the world behind the clock. That night at exactly midnight, the clock began to chime, not 12 times, 13. Each chime made the air ripple, the lights flicker. On the 13th strike, the clock's glass cracked, and through the fracture, Lena saw movement, as though something was behind the glass, pacing. When she touched it, her fingers didn't hit the surface. They passed through. And then she was falling. The other side. Lena landed hard on cold stone. When she stood up, she was no longer in her apartment. The sky above her was the same sterile blue Jacob had seen. Uniform, artificial, wrong. The buildings looked like wax models of real ones, slightly melted at the edges. The air ticked softly, and in the distance she saw him, a man standing under a flickering streetlight, staring at her as if he'd seen a ghost. He looked just like her reflection, the man from the mirror. "Jacob?" she whispered. He nodded cautiously. "You bought the clock. The rules of the world. That isn't ours." He told her everything about the listing, the ticking, the day he threw the clock away and woke up here. "This place," he said, voice low, "is a copy. It looks like our world, but it isn't. The people here, they move in loops. The sky never changes. Time doesn't pass. And the clocks, they feed on us." "Feed?" Lena asked. "They pull us in. Every time someone throws one away or breaks it, it resets, starts again, looks for the next buyer. And once you're here, you don't leave." Lena frowned. "Then how do we stop it?" Jacob smiled weakly. "That's the thing. You don't days past, or what felt like days." Lena and Jacob searched for a way out. Every road led back to the same intersection. Every door opened into another copy of her apartment. And in every copy, there was a clock on the wall ticking, each one showing a different time. Jacob began to act strangely. He'd disappear for hours. He'd stare at her reflection instead of her. He'd whisper things when he thought she was asleep. Numbers, times, names she didn't know. Then one night, she woke up to find him gone. The only thing left was a note. "When the 13th chime rings again, wake up." Moments later, the clocks around her began ticking faster. Tick, tick, tick. They all struck 13 at once. The final hour. Lena opened her eyes. She was in her apartment. Morning light, coffee cup on the counter. The clock was gone. It worked. She was free. She smiled, shaking her head. "Just a nightmare," she whispered. Her phone buzzed. A new message. "Jacob, don't trust the morning." Her blood ran cold. She looked outside. The sky was blue, too blue. And down on the street, the people walked in perfect rhythm, every movement synchronized. She looked at her reflection in the window and saw Jacob's face staring back. An online listing appears a week later. $1 clock. Something is wrong with it. The 13th hour. The sky never changed. That's what Jacob hated most. He and Lena had been wandering the false world for what felt like weeks, maybe months. The sun never set, and the shadows never moved. The air ticked faintly, like an invisible heartbeat pulsing beneath reality. They had found other people, but none of them spoke. They moved mechanically, repeating the same gestures, walking the same paths. When touched, they dissolved into dust and reappeared elsewhere, like rewound film. The world was a clock, and they were trapped inside it. The Echo Town. They stayed in a house on the edge of the silent town, a place Jacob swore looked identical to the house where he'd found the clock. Every room had a clock in it. Every clock showed a different time. Lena spent her days writing on the walls with charcoal, mapping each street, noting where loops began and ended. Jacob watched her from the corner of his eye. She had stopped blinking as much, and sometimes her reflection didn't follow her movements. He didn't mention it. Neither of them did. The stranger one morning, if it could be called morning, a knock echoed at their door. No one ever knocked here. When Jacob opened it, a man stood outside dressed in old clothes, his expression calm and eerily familiar. "Who are you?" Jacob demanded. The man smiled faintly. "The same as you." A guest of time, Lena appeared behind Jacob. "What do you mean?" The stranger stepped inside, glancing at the nearest clock. "You broke the cycle once," he said to Jacob. "You threw the clock away, remember? You woke up, but you didn't wake up in your world. You woke up in mine." Lena frowned. "Yours?" He nodded. "Each time someone destroys the clock, they don't end the curse. They inherit it. The world resets around them. Every new owner becomes the next keeper. The next clockmaker, Jacob's stomach twisted. "Then who are you?" The man smiled, eyes dark and hollow. "The one who sold it to you." The revelation. The clocks in the house began to chime, one after another. A rolling wave of mechanical noise that built into a deafening roar. The air rippled, the walls bending like glass. The stranger walked calmly through it. "You've seen how it feeds. Every tick is a second stolen. Every chime a new reality spun. You can't destroy it, Jacob. You can only pass it on." Lena grabbed Jacob's hand. "We don't have to play this game." The man tilted his head. "Then end it." "But you won't like what that means." Jacob shouted over the noise. "How do we stop it?" The stranger stepped close enough that Jacob could see the hollow gear-like patterns in his eyes. "You become it." And with that, he vanished, leaving only the faint scent of oil and dust behind. The 13th chime. That night, the clocks all stopped at once. The silence was worse than the ticking. Lena sat in front of the grand clock, the one they'd brought with them from the center of town, tracing the cracks on its face. "He was lying," she whispered. "There has to be a way out." Jacob didn't answer. His gaze was fixed on the pendulum. It wasn't moving. Then faintly it began to swing, on its own. The clock's hands spun violently, and from within came a familiar whisper. "Jacob? Lena? Time's run out." The pendulum burst into flame, burning a circle of light on the floor. Through it, they could see another world. Lena's apartment. Real, alive, imperfect. Home. Jacob reached for her. "We can go back." But Lena didn't move. Her eyes were wide, fixed on the reflection in the glass. It wasn't hers. It was his. The twist. Jacob looked closer and saw himself inside the clock. Not standing beside it, but behind the glass, pounding on it, silently screaming. The version of him outside turned slowly toward Lena. "Do you hear it?" he asked softly. "The ticking?" Lena stepped back. "Jacob?" He smiled, the same faint, calm smile the stranger had. "The 13th hour always needs a keeper." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small brass key, the clock's winding key, and placed it in her trembling hand. "You're next," he whispered. The world shattered. Lena woke in her apartment, morning light. Her hands were covered in ash. The clock was on the wall, perfect, unbroken, ticking quietly. Her phone buzzed with a new notification. $1 clock. Something is wrong with it. The attached photo showed her living room, but this time she was in it, smiling faintly, one hand on the clock, the other holding a brass key. And in the reflection of the glass, deep behind the turning gears, Jacob watched. Forever. In another town, another night, a young man scrolls through listings, half asleep. He stops at one that catches his eye. $1 clock. Something is wrong with it. He chuckles. What's the worst that could happen? And clicks buy. Forgotten ticking. Jacob had been missing for 3 months. His brother Ethan stopped believing it was just a disappearance after the second week. Jacob wasn't the type to vanish. Not without a word, not without leaving a trace. The police had found nothing. His car was still in the parking lot outside his apartment. Keys inside, door unlocked. His rent was overdue. The only odd thing noted in the report was a circular mark burned into the living room wall, about the size of a clock. They chalked it up to vandalism. But Ethan knew better. Jacob's life had stopped, literally. The apartment Ethan got the spare key from the landlord. The moment he stepped inside, he felt it. Stillness. The air was cold, the kind of cold that felt deliberate. The living room was almost empty. One wall was bare except for a faint outline where something used to hang. He crouched closer. The wallpaper there was discolored, singed in a perfect circle, and faintly under the quiet hum of the city outside, he heard it. Tick, tick, tick. He froze. The sound wasn't coming from any visible clock. It was inside the wall. The file Ethan took Jacob's old laptop from the desk. It still worked. On the desktop was a single folder titled "Don't Open." Classic Jacob humor. Inside were photos, dozens of them. They were all of the same object, a tall, ornate wooden clock. Some were close-ups of the carvings, others were screenshots of a web listing. $1 clock. Something is wrong with it. The last photo was different. It was a blurry image of Jacob standing in his living room, half turned toward the camera, one hand touching the clock's glass. His reflection wasn't his. The messages Ethan scrolled through Jacob's emails. Most were normal, repair shop updates, work correspondence. But near the end, a pattern appeared. Dozens of messages from anonymous addresses, all with the same subject line: "Do not let it stop." The body of each email was blank, all except one. It read, "When the 13th chime sounds, you'll understand." Ethan stared at it for a long time before shutting the laptop. Outside, a distant church bell rang. He counted the chimes. 12. Then faintly one more. The cellar. Jacob's search history was obsessive. He'd looked for antique clock repair shops, forums about time anomalies, and urban legends. One link led Ethan to a long-deleted forum thread titled "The Clock That Shouldn't Tick." Anyone else seen it? The comments were frantic, disconnected. "Mine won't stop ticking even after I took out the gears. I see people outside that aren't real. Every time I sleep, I wake up in the same place. It's not a clock, it's a door." The final post simply said, "If you bought it, you've already wound it." Then a user named @clockkeeper13 replied, "New cycle begins." New keeper chosen, Ethan clicked the username. The profile picture loaded. A photograph of Jacob, the reflection. Ethan started dreaming about the clock. Sometimes it was hanging on his bedroom wall. Sometimes it floated in a dark room, pendulum swinging like a heartbeat. And always at the edge of his vision, he saw someone standing inside the glass, trying to speak. He couldn't hear the words, but the expression was unmistakable. It was Jacob. He woke one night to find his mirror fogged from the inside. Across it, written in dripping letters, 13. The antique shop, desperate for answers. Ethan tracked the original listing to a small antique shop just outside town. The doorbell jingled as he entered, but no one was there. The shop was full of clocks, every kind imaginable. Mantle clocks, cuckoo clocks, grandfather clocks, all ticking, all slightly out of sync. At the counter sat a book, open to a page labeled Ownership Lineage. Names filled the list in careful handwriting. Charles Harrow, 1891. Edith Moore, 1922. Dale Carter, 1954. Jacob Harlow, 2025. The next line was blank. He stared at the space beneath Jacob's name as the pen beside the book slowly rolled toward him. The clocks grew louder. The 13th hour. When he turned to leave, the shop's front door was gone. Only a wall of wooden gears remained, living, shifting machinery, pulsing with light from behind its seams. The clocks all struck midnight together. Then, one final echoing chime. 13. The pendulums froze. Ethan stepped backward, trembling. "Jacob!" From somewhere deep in the ticking silence, a voice whispered back, "It's your turn." The sound came from the mirror behind the counter. Jacob's face staring out, smiling faintly, one hand pressed against the glass. Ethan lifted his hand to the surface. The glass felt warm. Then it pulled him in. Days later, the antique shop reopened. The counter gleamed as though freshly polished. A new listing appeared online. $1 clock. Something is wrong with it. This time, the attached photo showed a man in his 20s, brown hair, nervous eyes, standing in a dusty shop, smiling faintly beside an old clock. The name below the photo read, Ethan Harlow, and somewhere far away, another clock began to tick. The clockmaker's legacy. The shop was silent. No ticking, no creaking, no sound at all, as if time itself was holding its breath. Dust hung motionless in the air. In the center of the room, Ethan Harlow stood before the great clock, taller than any man, its frame carved with spirals and eyes that seemed to follow him. He didn't remember how long he'd been there. Somewhere in the distance, he could still hear his brother's voice. "It's your turn," but the words had started to fade, blending with the low hum of the gears. He was becoming part of the rhythm. The clockmaker's journal. Ethan found it hidden beneath the counter, a leather-bound journal covered in wax and soot. The name etched into the cover read, A. W. Harrow, Clockmaker, 1889. Inside were sketches of clocks, pendulums, and strange diagrams that looked more like anatomy than machinery. Gears and veins intertwined. The final entry was written in hurried ink. "Time is not a line, it is a cage. The keeper does not die. He winds the world, a dry drop of blood marked the page. Beneath it, a faint note in a different hand, one that looked disturbingly familiar. To the next keeper, do not open the 13th hour." Ethan closed the book slowly, but the clock behind him had already started to move. The spiral. The pendulum began to swing. The sound filled the room, deep and resonant, like a heartbeat underwater. Each tick made the light bend slightly, as if the air were folding in on itself. On the wall opposite him, mirrors began to appear, one by one, each showing fragments of other lives. Jacob screaming as he threw the clock away. Lena touching the glass, her eyes hollow, the stranger smiling as the world dissolved around him. Each reflection ticked in time with the pendulum, and in every one of them, Ethan saw the same figure standing in the background. The clockmaker, the truth of the 13th hour. Ethan turned to the great clock. Its hands spun wildly, then stopped on a time that shouldn't exist. 1300. The wood split open like flesh. Behind the gears was not machinery, but a tunnel of shifting light and shadow. A corridor of time itself, pulsing like a living heart. He felt it calling to him. Whispers echoed from the dark. Every keeper builds the next world. Every chime is a rebirth. The 13th hour never ends. He stepped forward, drawn in despite himself. The air smelled of metal, smoke, and something ancient. At the tunnel's end, he saw a workshop, small, candlelit, filled with unfinished clocks. A man stood at the table, turning a key. The same face Ethan had seen in the mirrors. The clockmaker, the origin. The man looked up, eyes like glass. "You've come far, Ethan," he said softly. "Most don't make it this far. Most become echoes." "Who are you?" Ethan whispered. "I built the first clock," the man said. "Not to tell time, but to trap it." He picked up the clock's pendulum, which pulsed faintly with light. "When my wife died, I couldn't bear to let her go. So I built a machine that could freeze the moment before death, hold it forever." He looked around the room, eyes full of sorrow. "But eternity is not a gift. It's a hunger." The clock began to feed on memory, on reality, on the souls of those who touched it. Every time it's destroyed, it starts again. New faces, new worlds, Ethan's voice trembled. "Then how do I end it?" The clockmaker smiled, sad, knowing. "You don't end it, you replace it." The choice. The workshop began to shake. Gears burst from the walls, spinning through the air like razors. The light turned golden, then black. The clockmaker stepped closer and placed a key in Ethan's hand, the same one Jacob once held. "Wind it," he said, "or the world stops. Every second since the first tick depends on it." Ethan stared at the key, heart pounding. "If I don't?" The man smiled faintly. "Then you'll wake up." The gears screamed. The walls split open. Time itself began to tear. Ethan raised the key. The ticking slowed, stopped. For the first time in forever, the world was silent. Then, he turned the key. The end of time light flooded the workshop. The world folded in on itself like paper. When the brightness faded, Ethan was standing in a small antique shop. Normal sunlight streamed through the window. Birds chirped outside. The clocks were still. On the counter sat a single note in his own handwriting. To whoever finds this, the clock is repaired. The curse is broken. Do not wind it again. He smiled faintly, tears in his eyes. Finally, it was over. He walked out of the shop into the morning air. For the first time in centuries, the sky was a real blue, soft and imperfect. The shop door closed behind him. Inside, the silence lingered, until somewhere in the back room, tick, tick, the pendulum began to swing again. Weeks later, a maintenance worker entered the empty shop, cleaning dust from the counters. He found an old clock sitting on a table, beautifully carved, the nameplate reading Harlow and Sons. He smiled to himself. Nice craftsmanship, he murmured. On the back of the clock, a small brass tag read, $1 clock. Something is wrong with it. He laughed quietly, shaking his head. Yeah, sure, he said, pocketing his coin. Then he wound it once, just to hear it tick. The 13th hour began again.